Hi, I'm Figment, and today we're going to follow up in the second video in the series about the subtractor. Last time we spoke about the oscillator section, and specifically what types of waveforms are offered in the oscillators, the tuning section, both oscillator 1 and 2 generally, and the noise oscillator. Today we're going to go over kind of what makes the subtractor a little unique, and that would be these built-in phase units that are in each oscillator. Now, the way phase works is when it's turned on, when the phase is turned on, the waveform that's selected in the oscillator, let's say it's a triangle wave, is duplicated. So now you have two triangle waves. If it was a sawtooth, it would duplicate it and you have two sawtooths. If it was special wave number 9, you would have two special waves number 9s. And what happens is it's duplicated, and this phase knob, when it's directly in the center, which it is now, 64, both triangle waves, in this case, are right next to each other. They're in sync, if you will. As you turn this phase knob to the left slightly, it begins to push the duplicated waveform ahead of the original. The more you push this phase knob to the left, the farther ahead the duplicated waveform will be ahead of the original. When you push it in this direction, it pushes the waveform slightly behind the original wave. And of course, the more you push it, the more it will go behind. Now, right now the phaser is off, so you're not going to hear anything. You could turn this knob a whole bunch of ways and you'd get no effect. You have to turn it on by choosing either one of these two options, multiplication or subtraction. So once you've turned it on, and you've either pushed that duplicate waveform a little bit ahead, a little bit behind, wherever those two waveforms are, or even if it's dead center, it basically takes the sum of the two waveforms and subtracts them. If it was in multiplication, it would take the sum of those two waveforms, wherever they may be, and multiplies them. This will create a kind of different and new, more complex waveform than your original waveform was, in this case, a triangle. So I have a little oscilloscope here, and maybe you can see visually. You won't actually see the duplicate waveform sliding because the sum and the difference are being either subtracted or multiplied so you're getting one waveform, but you will hear a tonal difference, and you will also see that waveform being modified with phase. So let's hit play and look at this triangle wave. So here's our triangle wave. Turn the phaser on, maybe subtractive setting. And as I turn it to the left, phase is being applied, and the waveform is changing. As I apply it to the right, the waveform is changing. Here's multiplication. And this applies for any waveform you choose. That's phase. Each oscillator has its own phase knob, or phaser built into it. Now, the next kind of feature that's built into the subtractor is a FM knob. FM is frequency modulation. The way that works is basically you have two signals, a carrier signal and a modulation signal, And the frequency of the carrier signal is affected by the frequency of the modulation signal. So in this case, we'll use a sine wave, I'm sure. Oh, well, before I even get into that, the subtractor, in the case of the subtractor, oscillator 1 is always the carrier. Oscillator 2 is always the modulator. Just the way it works. You can't change it. It's just their relationship here in the subtractor. So we have this mix knob all the way to the left, which is going to give us oscillator 1, so we can hear this wave be modulated by the frequency content of our second waveform. We could use a square wave. How about that? Turn it on first, I guess, if it's going to work. So here's our sine wave. And as I turn this frequency modulation knob, it will increase the amount of modulation that this modulator will do to this carrier. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. You can get a lot of frequency modulation. Back to a sine. You can use any type of wave and any type of modulator, and you'll begin to see the effects and get some really cool, complex waveforms. Now, especially if you have phase involved, let's say you tried to add some FM and you had some phase setting going on here, or maybe a phase setting here, you get even more different results because of the fact you're using both phase and FM together. You get all types of inharmonic and harmonic sounds. Definitely encourage you to play around with that. But in a nutshell, I'm not sure if I mentioned keyboard tracking, did I? Well, anyway, if I didn't, I'll cover it in another video. But for the most part, this sums up the sound section, the oscillator section in the Subtractor. So, experiment with that, play around. Any questions, any comments, post them below, and I will talk to you later.